utilisation of our software solutions. Again, those of you who have been on previous sessions with us will know that we like to give you the opportunity to pose your questions, and we like to wait for our Q&A session at the end to answer those. But if anything comes up during the webinar today, please just pop your questions in the question box on the right-hand side of your screen, and I will collate those and we'll talk through those with Tamara at the end of today's session. Just before I hand over, I'd like to check that you can all hear me and also see the title slide for the webinar on your screen. Just a bit of a fun one, just to check that everyone can hear me and understand what I'm saying today. I'd just like you to test out your ability to find the question box as well. So if you could just type in where you're joining us from today, that'll only be seen by Tamara and I, and we're just interested to see how global an audience we have today, and that'll allow me just to check that you can all hear me. So if you just pop where you're joining us from in that question box, that message will come through to me and I'll know that everything's okay. Should you have any technical difficulties during the session, just let me know through that question box again, and I'll do my best to resolve them for you. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Tamara. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, James. And again, welcome everyone to the session today. So today's session, we're going to be exploring why member feedback is so important. So we're going to look at what types of member feedback are traditionally used and the impact that effective member feedback processes have on your business, your members, and your team. So firstly, why is it so important? Over time, we've employed things like mystery visitors as a standard practice. But why is that? Because we really want to understand how well we are delivering the service we expect to, how well our teams are putting into practice the things that we expect of them, and to get a real understanding of the actual experience of our members as they come through the door. So imagine if you could generate this, not just regularly, but daily and even hourly, from hundreds of your own members about their actual real-life experience through your club. So there are three major benefits of effectively collecting feedback if this is done well. So firstly, generating large amounts of information. So we're opening up a flow of invaluable knowledge and information about your club and your members' needs. Secondly, we're opening channels of communication. Anytime that we can engage with our members and create a dialogue between understanding their experience, how they feel about that and what that means for them, and also knowing that you're listening to them, is hugely important. And thirdly, moving on from that members feel that they have a voice. It's hugely important that our members feel that they have a say in what's happening within their club, and most importantly, that they feel valued and listened to. So these thoughts, ideas, and conversations are happening continuously. What matters is whether or not you're ensuring you're the ones that are hearing them. So how can you collect member feedback from your club? There are traditionally four main ways that we generate member feedback. So firstly, in person. This is obviously very personal. It helps you to strengthen your relationships with individuals, and any one-to-one interaction is always hugely beneficial, as we've discussed on our previous webinars. But in contrast to that, it is very time-consuming and very resource-heavy. It's also likely that staff are going to gravitate towards the members that they already know. That, amongst other reasons, means that we have a small sample size. What are we doing about those members that don't come into the club? Are we generating the feedback from those people who aren't engaging with you, that have a lot more information that we need to gather? Importantly, will members be honest to your team to their face, especially if they've got an issue to raise about potentially you or one of your colleagues? And even more importantly, what do staff actually do with that feedback once they have it? How do you know that it's tracked and actioned, and is there any follow-up? So secondly, we can look at suggestion boxes. These are very quick, they're easy to set up and very low cost. However, the feedback has to be completed in clubs, so you're likely again to get a biased sample of just your regular users. What about those members who aren't regularly visiting? Would you discover why they aren't in more often? What do you do with those comment cards once they've been submitted? And again, how do you track and action the follow-up? Will a comments box look to members a bit of potentially a box-ticking exercise rather than showing them that you genuinely care and want to consistently improve on their needs? We also can't guarantee members will leave their contact details, so potentially we end up with feedback that we can't actively follow up and close that loop. So then we come into something a little bit more structured, where we start to look at our traditional one-off online surveys. So these can be much more in-depth. They can be completed in club or away from club, and we can generate much wider feedback from a wider group of members. But if we've got a large survey within multiple questions, will your members want to spend their valuable time answering pages of pages of those questions about you? We know that members will generally not stay on these sort of pages for any significant length of time. A yearly one-off survey send will not provide you with a constant stream of up-to-date feedback that you require. We want to know ongoing throughout the year how we're performing. And again, how do you use the feedback to measure and benchmark your performance? Are you seeing that month-on-month, year-on-year trends of improvements? There's also an amount of resource. Somebody has to manually go through these pages and pages of feedback to really generate insights and trends, and how likely actually is that? Are you pulling out the key information that's really important and seeing those key trends that actually reflect what's happening in your business? Importantly, customer satisfaction surveys don't give you any real insight into actual loyalty. So finally, we come to Net Promoter Score. So we'll talk a little more in a moment exactly what Net Promoter Score is, but the pros of the Net Promoter Score is that it creates club advocates who promote your facilities to your friends and family. It also allows us to understand who those people are. It has a specific focus on customer loyalty, which promotes a culture of customer service excellence. It allows us to collect, interpret, and act on feedback, all from within one system, and creates a structured follow-up process. To tackle our sample bias, it has one simple question. It's quick and easy for members to answer. It's much more easily to be action-based. We can reach out to members after a specific visit, interaction, or an experience, and can take that from that large sample size. We're creating a steady stream of ongoing feedback we can react to each day. And simple scoring means that the club performance is clear and can be easily compared to other Net Promoter Score organisations, so we can benchmark our improvements and how we're comparing to others within our industry and outside. So there have to be some cons, some challenges, and there are. It does require an engaged, proactive team to maximise its potential, something that we are on a day-to-day basis. If we're asking for feedback from members, we have to proactively be reacting to that and letting them know that we listened. So what is Net Promoter Score? So this was developed after several years of research to find out, was there one single question that had a significant impact and relationship with actual business growth? And this is the question that they found had the most relevant connection. And it may be something, if you're not familiar with Net Promoter Score, that you will recognise as the question: how likely are you to recommend to someone that you know? But there may be some of you that are very familiar with Net Promoter Score, so just to make sure we're on the same page, I just want to quickly review how this is calculated. So we ask our members how likely they are to recommend us to someone they know, and they very simply give us a score from 0 to absolutely not, to 10, I'm extremely likely, and I've probably already done so. Once we gather this feedback, we can group those responses into promoters, passives, and detractors. Promoters are our raving fans, those members scoring us 9 or 10 out of 10. They absolutely love their club and what you do, and are happily promoting you to anyone they know. Our passives, they're fine. They would potentially tick the box of being satisfied, but they're not really the raving fans. Detractors, anybody that scores you a 6 or less, they're potentially stuck in an unhappy relationship. There are things that frustrate them, and they have challenges in their club. And they're certainly not recommending you. Chances are they're doing your business some damage by being unhappy and telling people so. So let's look at how we calculate an actual NPS score. So this is our simple scoring method. So let's say we asked 100 people. 40 of them scored us between 9 and 10. 40 of them scored us between 7 and 8, and then 20 of them were detractors. From a satisfaction perspective, we might look at 80% of our scores are from 7 and above. That feels pretty good. From an NPS perspective, that's not sufficient for us. We want loyalty, and I'll explain why in a moment. So what we do is we calculate our percentage of promoters, in this case 40, and we subtract our number of detractors. So in this instance, our overall NPS score would be 20. So why does loyalty matter? Well, as part of the research around Net Promoter Score, what they found was that 80% of customers leaving a business, and this was across all industries, would have ticked the box of satisfied. Only 20% of them would actually be neutral or dissatisfied. So what does this tell us? Ticking the box, satisfaction is not enough to make a member stay with you. So if I'm satisfied with my club, that's fine. It might do all the things I expect of it. But if, let's say, my friend joins a club down the road, or there's an offer at a club somewhere else in my town, maybe there's a program that starts in another club that I really want to attend. Satisfied isn't enough to prevent me leaving to go to do that alternative activity or go and exercise somewhere else with my friend. Loyalty means I love my club. This is where I want to be. It doesn't really matter what happens elsewhere because I really like being part of this facility. But why else does it matter? We've proven that it has a significant impact on your length of stay. So as a small recap for some of those who may have not seen our retention curves, this is where we track the length of stay of a member. So we'll take a large group of members and look at their join date. So their join date is 0.0, whenever that might have been. And then we look at what happens to them over the following months. So what we're looking at here is that 50%, at what point are 50% of members still paying a membership and 50% have left. That's our median length of stay. So we can see in this example here, we're looking at people who didn't take the survey, those that did and were detractors, those that did and were passive, and those that did and were promoters. So you can see simply the act of being involved in taking part of the survey has a significant impact on the length of stay. In fact, the difference between being engaged enough to take a survey and being a promoter, we can almost double the length of stay. So we open those channels of communication to get members engaged with what we're doing, to make them want to share feedback with us, because the act of getting involved in that process of feedback improves their length of stay. If we can create more promoters, they actively stay with us longer. If every member of our membership base stayed even an extra month longer, that makes a huge difference on our bottom line. So let's look at our detractors. We're often very concerned about opening ourselves up to complaints. However, the truth is, if someone is complaining about your business, we need to make sure that you're the people they're complaining to. Because if not, it might be your potential prospects they complain to instead. It's also important to remember that they are likely to be the voice of a wider group of people. Research suggests that every complaint there are 26 others who feel exactly the same and didn't speak up. They just leave and tell others. So we should treat our detractors as the voice of a group. However hard to hear, we must be open to listening to what frustrates our members, take the positive approach that as long as they tell you, you're able to act on it, and more importantly, they're giving you an opportunity to open a dialogue with them and show them how important they are to you and how much you value their feedback and assistance in moving forwards. Consider it as important information to help improve your business rather than another complaining member. Handling complaints can be difficult and takes skill, but once you take on the challenge, you'll see that just responding to their problem with sincerity can make all the difference, even if fixing their problem might be difficult. For example, you might never be able to create a bigger car park, but you can make them feel listened to, and you could potentially advise them on quieter times of day to attend or alternative parking options. Imagine you sent a complaint to a company and the very next day the manager called you to ask how they could help. You would almost certainly believe your experience mattered to them, and potentially they were going to act on your feedback. But as this webinar is all about, it isn't all about the complaints. But to start with, even dealing with detractors can be positive, providing those learnings, information on trends, and insight into what's really happening in your club, as well as making your members really feel listened to and valued. But we often forget to focus on the positives. Knowing what members love about your club, your team, and their experience helps you know where we got it right and where we can replicate that over and over and over again. Coming back to one of the most famous England rugby coaches, Clive Woodward once famously said, "We celebrate briefly when we win, we celebrate briefly, but then we get back to work. It's important that we analyse our wins as much as our losses." So they want to know, why did it go so right? Why did everything work smoothly? Why did the team come together and deliver everything at the right place at the right time in the right way? And once we know that, we can work to maintain it, replicate it over and over, and even expand it. Letting your raving fans know that you hear them and appreciate them is also invaluable. Invite them to be part of your team by providing you with testimonials of how you've helped them. Maybe sitting on your customer focus groups or being a club ambassador in some way. If nothing else, they said that they would recommend you to friends or someone they know, so give them ways to do that. It might be just free passes or joining offers, or invite them to events that their friends and the family can benefit from. And they can feel great about giving back to their favourite club, as well as helping their loved ones get active and benefit from the great experience that they've already had. But okay, if the feel-good doesn't grab you, let's talk sales numbers. Your promoters are your hottest leads. So if we think about them as our sales conversion model, you already know that they will recommend you. So give them that opportunity to harness the power of these promoters to create a significantly expanded sales force. One that's selling to people who know and trust them. We know that this creates a much higher conversion rate, and even better, people who join through the recommendation of a trusted friend or family member and who could potentially be exercising with them is someone who's much more likely to be a promoter themselves, and so this cycle continues. No one wishes to do your salespeople out of a job. However, this means that they can focus on targeted high-yield sales while this promoter campaign runs along continuously alongside. But think about the positives for your team. Here's some real-life examples of some feedback that clubs have received through NPS. We've highlighted some words here looking at amazing facilities, excellent, it's brilliant, it's amazing. I'm very happy with my new membership. So this is where we move beyond the satisfied. This isn't about, yeah, it's great, I like my club. This is your team are amazing, your club is excellent, it's a brilliant place to be. But also feedback in terms of, I always feel like I'm made to feel comfortable and not out of place. That's a hugely emotive piece of feedback. So we can use this to focus on the positives within our team. Using the positive feedback to acknowledge great service delivery or individuals, sometimes they're named individually. But as well as learning what members love, you can continue to replicate. Consider the motivation and pride you can create for a team who see the positive impact they have on their members, and how easily we can use this to move from a number of individuals running a club to a team delivering a great experience to real people, and one that they understand and see the benefits for and are driven to do more and more. So I want to share a couple of examples of how other clubs have benefited from using this type of member feedback. So firstly, one of the things that we also do through MPS is look at the trends. So we can see what are we getting the most feedback on, either positively or negatively. So one particular chain of clubs that we worked with tracked this really closely. And when it came to a point when they had an amount of budget they'd set aside for one part of their business, they actually changed their decision of where they would prioritise that budget based on exactly what their members told them. Because that wasn't the priority for the people paying membership and people coming in through the door. We'd worked in another large chain of clubs who have used MPS to really target all the departments within their facility. So rather than it just being one group of people just dealing with the detractors, they actually incentivised, for example, their maintenance team. They had to improve the MPS score and reduce the number of detractors based around maintenance feedback. So that helped them, again, reprioritise what was important to focus on in terms of maintenance. Things that would really impact the experience of their members. So I'd like to summarise a little bit of feedback and some takeaways for you. So firstly, some key things. You have to create opportunities to engage with your members if you want to achieve loyalty and growth. Open up those channels of communication and make sure you're the people that are hearing their feedback. But once you've done that, it's really important to have a clear action plan for what are you going to do with it. And the same with any feedback, any data, any KPIs, they're only useful if you're going to use them to inform change, to inform action, and inform the member of what you're doing with that. You said this is what we've done. But don't get too bogged down in just the negatives. It's essential that if somebody tells you that they're unhappy and they have a problem, we react to that as immediately as we can and as high level as we can. We always encourage that a manager or somebody of management level will deal with the detractors. Because imagine the situation, if you have a problem that we need some sort of action and resolution, if the phone call you get is somebody that can't immediately solve that problem, or as somebody who sees, with no disrespect to them, but part of the general customer services team, compared to the message of, I'm the club manager, I'm really sorry this happened, tell me a little bit more about it, and let's see what we can do for you. I can make the decision to action that right there on that call. But we need to use that information from our positives as well. So treat the positives in exactly the same way. Let's learn from them, let's action them, let's learn from them, move them forward in our business. And we can also do this by harnessing our promoters. They are active sales force. They are people that are telling everybody how fantastic you are. Create real opportunities for them to do that in a way that you can track, you can manage, and you can benefit from. So that's the end of our structured session, and we'd really love to hear any questions that you had along the way.
Okay, yeah, if you could just, anyone who has a question or discussion point that they'd like us to talk through, we'd be very, very happy to do that. So if you just use that question or chat or comment box that you used when you sent across where you were logging in from today, then we can start to discuss those questions. Just for me, I think it was really interesting looking at that the graph, the retention curve, just to see again how those who aren't involved in surveys are so much less likely to stay with the club than even those that respond to a survey negatively.
I think, to pick up on that, James, I think a lot of it relates back to how engaged they are with you. And if a member has no strong feelings one way or the other, then we'll tend not to get feedback from them from anyone. but we do this more so with MPS because it's such a quick and simple way to do it. But getting a member to the point where they are actively engaging with you, whether it's positive, neutral, or negative, actually increase their length of stay because they're feeling like they're communicating with their club, that they're actively being interacted with, that they're being listened to, and they have some input into the club. So it's partly they don't take the survey if they feel that they can't do that, if they feel that they're not going to be listened to. There's almost a why would I bother? So it's important that you show that you're feeding back to people and encourage them to let them know that you really want to know about that and their feedback matters to them. It's their club, they're part of it, they inform what happens.
Yeah, and that reinforces the point you were making prior to that about being satisfied. It's very easy to assume that if someone is not providing feedback, then there's nothing wrong, but that obviously isn't the case. So it's not good enough to assume someone's satisfied, and even if they are satisfied, that's not good enough either.
Absolutely. Having nothing wrong doesn't necessarily mean I won't leave. We have to move forward so that we know that it's loyalty that makes a difference, not satisfaction. And it can be quite misleading to be measuring satisfaction because we think we're doing far, far better than we are in terms of ability to maintain our members for longer.
Okay, just a comment coming in from Carl there. Carl's just saying that, the takeaway that he will share with his team from this is that if your members complain, you want them to complain to us, not our prospects. And that is a really good point. Again, it's this assumption that, if they're not complaining to me, then they're fine. Well, they're not. They may well be complaining to someone else. And who would you rather get the negative feedback, you or all their friends on Facebook?
And I think this is sometimes the fear of opening the channels of communication is that we'll get a flood of complaints. I think firstly that's something to challenge. If we think we'll get a flood of complaints, that should ring some alarm bells that we have things we definitely need to improve, and to know what they are, we need to listen to them. But absolutely, just think about everything as feedback. It's really important, particularly if you're tasking your team to manage complaints and detractors, to really not take it personally. It's information they're providing you, and they might be frustrated, but the fact that you even listen to them and you're interested and you deal with that calmly and you can react to it in some way will actually make that person a much happier member. And even if you can't necessarily immediately fix the problem, they will be telling people that you listen to them, and that's the level of service from you. So and the important thing to remember is if they have a complaint, it's going to happen, and if just because we don't hear it, we don't know about it, doesn't mean it's not happening, and it's far more damaging when we're unaware of it. So I think that's a really good point, Carl.
Yeah, extending on that, we spoke to a club, one of our clients. I'm sure they won't mind us using the example. Back in February, fitness incentive over in the US, and they mentioned they got a lot of comments when they opened up to MPS about their car parking. The nature of their club is their car parking is finite. That's something they can't expand. They're aware it's a little small, and they knew those comments were coming in. Whilst they couldn't resolve the problem, what they did is they found alternative parking, mapped it out, priced it up for people. There was free parking here, there was very cheap parking there. So whilst they didn't solve the problem, they listened to the problem and they reacted in some way, and that was good enough for their members. So there's that approach too.
And it helps you sort of manage those expectations. If you know that potentially can cause frustrations when you have new members coming to join, you can actually set that expectation at the beginning. Parking at these times of day can be a real challenge, but this is how you would overcome that. Even if it's just make sure you arrive 10 minutes for your class, for example, earlier for your class, or you can use this alternative car park at that time of day. So we haven't solved the problem, but we have solved it being a problem and a frustration for the member because they understand that that's their expectation.
Exactly. Okay, I think if we just give it a couple more minutes for any more questions to come in, if anyone had a question or indeed a comment that they wanted to ask or share, just send that in now, and that'd be great to discuss.
Otherwise, while we're waiting for that, thank you very much for your time for joining us for this session. I hope it was informative. We will have recorded the session, and that will be available for anybody that registered for it, so we'll get that out to you as soon as we can.
Our next webinar will be at the end of August. We run these monthly for those of you who haven't attended previously. And the details for that one will be on our website in the next couple of weeks, so you'll be able to join that. As you'll see from the slide here, those of you in the UK, we'll be running a new event for our calendar, something that we're very excited about, our biggest ever event at the Chase Golf Health Club and Spa in Cannock. It's a day of practical learning and application to the real world of your club. There'll be industry thought leaders accompanying our retention experts and our staff giving talks on all manners of subjects, from things like member feedback to member conversations, and the wider kind of the issues and challenges maybe that you'll be having in your club. So we'd love it if you could join us for that day. Okay, so we haven't had any more questions come in, so Tam, if you're happy to do so, we can end the session there. Thanks very much, everyone.